Hey, everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Now, today I have in a thought. I had an epiphany probably over the weekend, I guess, and wanted to talk to you guys about it. I wanted to answer, in my opinion, what are the fundamentals of Jiu-Jitsu? It's a really interesting thought because everybody says, "Oh, focus on the fundamentals." A lot of people that I have on the show, they say focus on the fundamentals. A lot of people that are very good teachers and that I respect a lot. And so something that I will always do when somebody says that, because that's a very common answer for how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu, I always will ask, what are the fundamentals? What is that? What does that mean to you? And I had an interesting idea. For the longest time, I guess I was of the belief that there aren't fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. And my reasoning behind it was you don't actually have to have a good closed guard to be good at jiu-jitsu. Because that's what everybody says. That's the fundamental position of jiu-jitsu. For example, if you are somebody who wrestled through high school and college and you can take people down and have a great top game, does that mean you're fundamentally not sound in jiu-jitsu? Like, no, dude, you can take people down, you can control them, you can win matches, you can submit people, but you don't have good fundamentals. Like, what is fundamentals? Is it closed guard? And I had an epiphany because I was trying to help out one of my students this weekend. And actually, it was last week when we first were talking about it. I guess I won't name this student. Well, I guess I will. I'll just say his name's Ryan. I was going to say, I shouldn't name people on this show, shouldn't talk about my students by name. But one time we did talk about my student Ross getting choked unconscious twice in the same week. He told me like a week later when he was listening to the episode. This would have been the episode with Logan Wayne and I. But he said he was listening to the episode and he heard his name get dropped twice about how he got choked unconscious. And see, the funny thing about that is he was in the car with his wife and hadn't really told her those stories. And so that was interesting. So I guess if I talk about Ross, I can talk about Ryan. So Ryan is one of my students. He was struggling. He's one of my blue belts. And he was struggling. And he was saying, hey, I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of missing some things, I feel like. And we sat down and we talked about it. And so as we were kind of working through this, I actually something I don't really do. I don't really do private lessons very often because I just, I find that a lot of times they're not as useful as just like a 5-minute conversation. Sometimes just talking through what's going on is more important than anything. If somebody wants to learn a specific position and they just kind of want to crash course in it, I think private lessons are great. But usually you can get to the root of what's happening just through conversation if you've been around the game for a long enough time. And that's kind of what we did. We started to talk about it. What's going on? What struggles are you having? Okay, you feel like your guard's getting passed too easily. What could we do? A lot of times it's like people look at that. Oh, your guard's getting passed too easily. Let's just fix that and work your guard retention. Sometimes that's what helps. Sometimes it's not. I think a lot of times big picture can be very helpful at white and blue belt. And honestly, even past that, even for black belt, sometimes big picture is the best way to go about it. But as Ryan and I start talking, I said, and I knew the answer to this, but I said, Ryan, when was the time that you were having most success when you were training? And he said, well, it was right around when I got my blue belt. It would have been about a year ago, I think, a year and some change. And I said, okay, well, what happened then? What was it that you and I talked about that really helped you get that progression? And he said, I don't know. And, we kind of talked through it. But the answer was this. Before he and another guy from the gym, JD, they were really close to getting their blue belts. And every once in a while, I'll have this conversation with people. The big thing for me to give you your blue belt is not well-roundedness. I don't expect you to be a blue belt in every single position, to be honest. Well-roundedness is great, but that's not what I think a blue belt is. I think a blue belt is somebody who is like very good or above blue belt level at one thing, whether that's a position or a submission or a grip. And for Ryan, it was the Kimura. And we had this conversation. I said, you're very close to getting your blue belt. This is what I want from you. I want you to dead set. I want you to really focus on that Kimura and get better at it. And I actually stole that idea from Marcelo Garcia. I don't know if it was an interview or something. I just remember seeing or hearing him talk about mastering one thing first is one of the best ways to approach jiu-jitsu, because once you learn how to master that one thing, you can apply that to other things. You can start to learn to master other things. Well, Ryan was really good at the Kimura, and he started to get away from it. And this happens to a lot of people, and it sounds silly, but he started to get away from it because he was so good at it. You start to get really good at a position, and then you almost are like, well, I'm hitting this on everybody. I need to expand my game. I'm already good at this. Check the box. Now I need to do something else. And I would argue that you should never do that. I'll give you another scenario, and when I actually did this in my jiu-jitsu, but most of the time, I guess you shouldn't do this. And the reason behind it is this: you're still a blue belt at that Kimura. To get a game, to get really good at this move, you should keep focusing on it. That's how you build a game. That's how you get specific with a game in jiu-jitsu. You can't have a game in jiu-jitsu based around one move. With simplifyingjiu-jitsu.com, we are still doing our 40% off deal on the Essentials of Jiu-Jitsu Kimura. It's funny that that's what we're talking about today, but it's an entire game from all the main positions of jiu-jitsu using one move. You can build a game off that. You can build a game off of a triangle. And that's what happened to me when I was a blue and purple belt. It wasn't on purpose. I didn't do this like thinking through it in the same way I do now. It's kind of reverse engineered. But what I did was I started to get really good at the triangle as like at the very end of white belt. Actually, it was during white belt. That was my first finish in jiu-jitsu, was a triangle choke. That was my first win. I got murdered in my first match, and then I fought. There was 4 of us, and so I fought for 3rd place, and I got a triangle choke, right? And as I progressed, that's just where I was seeing the most success, and I was getting really good at the triangle choke. And all the way through purple belt, my finishing rate in the triangle choke was insane. My like win rate, like 90, or I think it was like 80 something percent or something like that of my wins were by triangle, which is really interesting because people knew I was going for it, but my entire game was built off of it. So my entire game was designed to find avenues to the triangle. You may expect me to get there, but you don't know all the different avenues that I have. And, Ryan, my student, is trying to use the Kimura that same way. Well, it's funny. Fast forward to yesterday. Yesterday was Sunday. I'm recording this on Monday. But yesterday was Sunday, and he said, hey, I really felt good today. And I actually watched him train. I got to watch a few more rounds than normal because I was a bit overtrained. And so I did like 4 or 5 rounds on Sunday. Usually that's a big open mat day where I do a bunch, but I was just physically beat up. So I got to watch, and I saw him beating guys that normally he wouldn't be beating, and actually doing like pretty dominantly beating guys that he normally wouldn't be beating. And he sat down after class and goes, hey, that little talk we had about getting back to my roots, getting back to the Kimura, it worked so well. Like I was crushing guys. And so kind of what I'm saying, why we brought up the whole idea of fundamentals is because fundamentals of jiu-jitsu are up to the individual. My fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, what is important to me, probably is going to be like spider guard and duck guard, which you guys still don't know of. I can't tell you guys any more about duck guard besides the name, and knee cuts, right? It's no secret that that's what I do. It's no secret that if somebody's going to compete against me, that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to sweep and pass their guard. That's what I'm going for, right? That's what would be the fundamentals of my jiu-jitsu. If I started to work something new, let's say what's something I've never worked before. Let's say that I've decided I'm going to get really good at arm bars. That's not something I do a lot. And or at least on bottom, I actually do a lot of arm bars on top, but we'll say like closed guard arm bars. I'm going to get really good at those. What's going to happen is there would be an like aggressive regression in my jiu-jitsu. I would start to miss arm bars. That would be the very beginning of things. I would have to learn those all over. Obviously, because I train so much and I've been around jiu-jitsu so much and I have done arm bars before, the learning curve wouldn't be somebody starting from white belt. But I still would be struggling. I would not be doing as well. I wouldn't perform as well against the guys that I train with that are higher level. And I definitely wouldn't perform as well at first against my opponents. So what I would have to do is I would either stick through that and a few years from now probably be really good at closed guard arm bars, hopefully, build a game off that. Or I could go back to my fundamentals, which would be my spider guard / duck guard, right? The guard that I have built my whole game around. Most likely, that guard is never going to change unless there is some type of injury that causes me to switch it or something like that. Most likely, that's going to be my game for the rest of my jiu-jitsu because it's very easy on my body and I have a lot of success with it. So what I'll have to do, though, is if I ever kind of get off of that, which probably has happened to a lot of people coming back from the quarantine, you forgot what you were doing. You forgot what you were having success with. So when I get back to it, then all of a sudden I start having success again. I start getting back to my fundamentals because they are individual. That is going to be incredibly important for your jiu-jitsu development, is just understanding that not everything is the same for everybody. If I'm 5'3" and you tell me that the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu are closed guard, most guys, I can't even lock my legs around. And this is actually part of why I got away from the triangle. I used to be that used to be the only position that I attacked. And now maybe once a class I go for a triangle, but almost never, besides, like once a class. Once a training session where maybe I'm doing like 10 rounds or something like that, I may go for one triangle. In no gi, I might do a little more, but I train a lot more in the gi lately. So why did I get away from that? Why did I abandon my fundamentals? Well, actually, this is a problem that you may run into later on in your jiu-jitsu. Your fundamentals don't necessarily match up with your goals. The more I train, the more I compete, seems like the bigger, the stronger, and the more steroids that my opponents are taking. And the triangle, even though I'm very technically sound in it and I can finish it on most people, some people are so strong that to finish it, it requires so much energy out of my legs that if I compete, I'm not able to compete and do a second match where I'm wanting to attack a triangle because I had a triangle for a minute on this guy that was so strong. And just keeping your legs locked sucks the life out of them. So that's what I would do is I had to make a change there. I had to change my fundamentals. And it was actually really, really hard. I switched to the omoplata because it was very close to what the triangle was. And I had some success with it. I had a little competitive success with it, but I was more having to focus on playing top when I started to switch that because changing my fundamentals as a brown belt was super, super hard. And now I'm happy that I did it because I do have a game that works a little bit better for what my goals in jiu-jitsu are. But it was really hard. It was frustrating. So what the idea is, kind of what you guys can do with this information, is you can think back to what were or are your fundamentals. What could you revert back to in your jiu-jitsu where you were experiencing a lot of success? That doesn't mean it's perfect. Just because you're going to say, oh, well, I want to revert back to Kimuras. Well, you revert back to them. Maybe at first you're going to miss them, but you will get increased success with this. And you're going to get increased success because that's what happens when you go back to your fundamentals. You remember again, and then you can start to develop more and get better at these positions. So it's really important, I think, to just make sure that you're not abandoning ship. And it's so easy to do in jiu-jitsu. It's so easy to do in anything. You start to see success, and so then you say, oh man, I'm good at everything. I should do something different. But your fundamentals, that's why you had that success. And so finding that balance, if you're somebody who's newer to jiu-jitsu and you say, well, I've never had any success in jiu-jitsu, I think there are a few ways you can go about it. One, you could always look to the best person in your gym that is close to your size and body type and see where they're having success, and then try to start to copy that. The reason I say that, going with somebody from your gym, is because then you can ask questions. Maybe your gym isn't a gym that questions are as welcome. Sometimes that's common at some gyms, that you just don't get to ask a lot of questions. People just don't like to give away their secrets. That's okay. Then you find something online. You find something. There's so much free material out there. There's not a ton of complete free material. Usually people don't give away for free an entire series or something like that is complete, but at least you can give you some basis. Or third, you can get the essentials of jiu-jitsu Kimura at simplifyingjujitsu.com, and it is 40% off until July 8th. Do you guys like how I worked that in there? That's what they call a shameless plug. And so seriously though, you guys should check it out. I really have heard some good success so far, and it's only been out for like 6 days, I think. And some people that bought it like day one have messaged me and told me that they've hit the Kimura a few times. You think about that. If somebody doesn't really get submissions, maybe even they'll go through a whole class. They'll do like the whole rolling. We roll for about a half hour at my gym. Maybe they go through the whole class, the whole half hour, and they don't finish anybody. And then they come out after 4 or 5 days of having an instructional and they hit 1 or 2 submissions. That's insane. That is so exciting to hear. If you guys did purchase it already and you have had some success, please send it to me. And also let me know if it's okay if I talk about that you sent it to me. I'll probably still talk about it anyway, but I won't name you. So if you had any success with it, be sure to let me know. Also, while we're on the Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu thing, check out our new Facebook group that is absolutely free. And it's just a way for people to be able to communicate with the idea of discussion of how can we make jiu-jitsu simpler? How can we learn more efficiently, more effectively? And we didn't limit it to just jiu-jitsu. It can be fitness, obviously related to jiu-jitsu, and diet too, and just anything. People can ask questions and get answers from really sharp people. Something I did with the people that I invited to the group. I invited a bunch of people, but the most important thing was to invite the most knowledgeable black belts that I knew. And so I knew that they would be happy to jump on and answer questions, because it helps them with branding and stuff. Because people can realize that there are all these black belts that are really sharp, they're really intelligent, and they answer people's questions. And so if you have any questions, if you're struggling with stuff, just post about it on that Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu Facebook group, and you will be able to kind of get some cool information. And that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that you guys can get back to the fundamentals. I hope that you guys check out the Essentials of Jiu-Jitsu Kimura at simplifyingjujitsu.com. I hope that you guys have an excellent 4th of July weekend. I'm sure that if you're not listening in America, you don't celebrate 4th of July. So I hope you just have a great weekend. And most importantly, I hope that you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu.